Welcome to the Persuasion and Presence for Program and Project Managers course. We are in our first week, and we're at our last module, Module 5, where I'll give you a tool to help you blend your stage presence, your logical arguments, and your emotional messages to help you create that perfect, persuasive, and compelling message. Before I talk about the perfect pitch tool, I want you to get this image in your head. So think about yourself in your office. And you've gathered lots of data. You've done all kinds of Google searches and other kinds of searches, and you've got a lot of data. And you spend a lot of time doing a lot of analysis, and you've got some brilliant insights, and you've got some wonderful charts and graphs and all this stuff, and you put it together into a comprehensive document, a really big comprehensive document. And you go to your meeting with your bosses, your stakeholders, senior management, and you share this big document in a 2-hour meeting. Let's make it a Zoom meeting. And you want to make sure you go over everything. How do you think your audience is going to react to that? And if you've done this before, you already know the answer. And how persuasive do you think you are when you do this process where you've got all kinds of data and you've done all kinds of analysis and you've got a big binder of evidence and facts and reasoning? How persuasive do you think you actually are? Well, here's the reality. If you've been in those kind of meetings where a person has a big binder of evidence and logic and persuasive arguments, and they're spending 2 hours going everything that they've done with their analysis and data, you're probably not that persuasive because you're not speaking to the audience's needs. Do you know what the stakeholders need to hear from you? Do you know what your customers need to hear from you? What are you doing to answer their questions? That's why I suggest the Elegant Pitch, the Perfect Pitch tool. This is created by Mike Figliola, and the whole idea here is to get to the question and get to the core idea and to answer the audience's needs and to put just enough information and persuasion and logic and emotion in there to help persuade the audience. So it may sound counterintuitive because you say, well, I need all this evidence. I need all this data. I need all this analysis. I don't even know, where to start in answering their question unless I do all this. But the biggest issue here, and this is where it's going to make you very more persuasive, is if you define the question up front and understand what your audience needs to know to make the decisions they need to make, and you create a core idea around that, and then you build your persuasive message architecture and you create a story for them. So in other words, you can still do the analysis and gather all the data, but now you're doing it with a purpose and you're essentially helping guide your audience along to make a good decision. And that's why I like the Elegant Pitch, the Perfect Pitch tool. The first step in our Perfect Pitch tool is defining the question. Now, I have been a professor for over 20 years, and I've had students give me all kinds of reports. And I like the students that come up with a great question and then answer it for me, rather than someone who just gives me a data dump. So the first thing that I want in my presentations is, what is the question you're trying to answer, and how does it relate to me? Because in many cases, when you're doing a persuasive message or presentation or even an informal in the hallway chat, you're trying to persuade someone to take an action to make a decision in your favor. So you've got to define the question for them and make the question relevant to them.
Hi, I hope you're enjoying this free lesson from the University of Maryland's Project Management Center for Excellence. If you want to check out more lessons just like this one, click the link in the description below where you'll be able to go to our website on executive project management. There, you can find edX courses, professional short courses where you can learn from an instructor like me, as well as request custom team training for you and your organization. All right, let's get back to the lesson, and I'll see you at the end.
And from that question, you can generate the core idea. In other words, okay, here's the question, here's how I would answer that question, or here's how I would hope you would answer that question. So in the Perfect Pitch, the Elegant Pitch, we talk about the hypothesis plus the button. And here's the idea here. So I have the question, and here's my hypothesis to answer that question. That's the logical part of a rhetorical triad. And then we have the button, the emotional part. What's in it for me? Why does it matter? How will it help my organization? You put those together, that's your core idea. So that's why, as a stakeholder, I'm going to sit up and take notice because you're answering my question. You got a good hypothesis, and you show me why I should care about this hypothesis. And that's the core idea piece there. And you need to have that first before you go any further. Now, once we have the core idea, we can start to build our story. And we have two choices for the architecture for our story. We can use a pyramid structure, or we can use a column structure. For the pyramid structure, we're going to start with the foundation. We're going to give a little background, a little context here before we introduce our core idea. And we're going to talk about the background and what is going on now. And we're going to talk about in our second layer what's changed. So how it was and what's changed now. And this is where our core idea comes in, where, okay, things have changed. We need to make a decision. We need to figure out what direction we're going to. So this is our core idea. This is our hypothesis plus why you should care as a stakeholder, as a customer, as a senior executive, and why you should implement the decision that I am promoting. That's the pyramid structure. Very simple. Start with background, give them a little context, tell them what's changed since the status quo, and then why our core idea will help us take a positive step into the future we want. Now, the other type of architecture is the column architecture. And it's pretty simple. You start with your core idea on the top. So you talk about your core idea. You get right up front about it and you say, this is what we're wanting to do in terms of the hypothesis and why I should care. And then underneath the core idea, you support it with no more than 3 points. If you have to go to 4, you can go to 4, but don't go any further than 4. At least have 2 points. So ideal here is point 1, point 2, point 3 that support your core idea. And that's the column architecture. In my experience, when I've looked at persuasive proposals, especially with program and project managers, it's usually the column architecture. Sometimes I might see the pyramid structure, but I'll more often see the column structure and building our story. And we talk a lot about stories, and we'll talk a lot more about stories. Stories are important because that's a great way for people to blend the emotion, the logic, and the presence together and make it more comfortable for our brain to accept what you're talking about. So let's put this all together. We have the elegant pitch, and we've talked about how that works. And it works because it fits into our emergent model of communication. Real quick review here. Remember the emergent model of communication? We have information. We have utterances. That could be written word. That could be spoken word. And we use this to create understanding in our audience. How do we know we have understanding? We use the understanding triad. The know what, the know how, and know why. So when you're putting together your core idea, which is your hypothesis, and the button which is why should these people care, you're putting that together, and that's basically your know why. It could include elements of know what and know how. But when you're building your architecture, whether you use the pyramid architecture or column architecture, you're answering the know what and know how questions to help support your core idea, which should contain the element of know why. And that's just how all this fits together.
Hey there, did you enjoy that lesson as much as I did? If you did, go ahead and give us a like. If you want to see another one, go ahead and subscribe. And if you have any questions or comments, put them below and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Moreover, is there somebody in your life who really needs this lesson right now? If so, go ahead and share it with them. I'm sure they'll appreciate it. Now, we look forward to seeing you in the next lesson where you can learn even more from the University of Maryland Project Management Center for Excellence. Thanks so much.